Hello, everyone. Today I had the opportunity to talk with Susan Anderson, who is the Executive Director for Wiregrass Hope Pregnancy Center. We had a wonderful conversation talking about the ways in which her ministry has helped so many young women who are in crisis and in a situation of facing an unplanned pregnancy, and what we can do to basically deploy grace toward them and think about how to assist them in the time of real difficulty in which they're facing some choices, and that we're hoping that they will choose life. We also thought about how we can be a help to young men as well who are facing that type of crisis along with them, along with counseling strategies and other ways that we can make a positive impact with the culture. Anyway, join us. Well, thank you for coming and talking with me. So what I was hoping you could do is just introduce yourself. I mean, like I said, you've done this several times before.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about a couple things. One, the story of Wiregrass Hope Pregnancy Center, and then your story, how it kind of led to that position where you're at right now. But I do have a couple of questions along the way about how we're addressing those things as a culture. Anyway, I'm sorry, I want to get out of your way, though.
No, that's fine. Well, my name is Susan Anderson. I have been affiliated with Wiregrass Hope Group for 18 years now in some capacity or another. I've only been the executive director for the last year. But actually, Wiregrass Hope was originally formed back in 1983 as Wiregrass Save a Life.
Okay.
It's kind of on the outskirts of Roe v. Wade. We were seeing more and more need and more crisis pregnancies in the area. Abortion was legal up until the third generation or the third trimester during that period of time.
Okay.
And so there was a group of concerned citizens here in Dothan. Most of them was out of the Presbyterian Church, First Pres, and then several other couples in the area. There was one strong couple, Dr. Calvin and Miss Yvonne Reed, that had moved here with his medical practice from Birmingham, and she was affiliated with a Save a Life in Birmingham. And so she brought the idea to start a Save a Life here in Dothan. So there was a group of men and women that came together, prayed for about 6 months, and launched it in 1983 downtown in a small little office complex there. And then it has just grown over the years, been just such a tremendously blessed ministry. Started off just doing pregnancy tests. Eventually we were able to add ultrasounds. In 2004, we acquired a building on Westgate Parkway and moved out into a much larger facility, was able to get an ultrasound machine, and that just really kind of changed the trajectory of the ministry. Once we were able to get into limited medical services with the pregnancy test and doing the ultrasound. It's amazing. Usually about 80% of our women that come through that are abortion minded, if we can get them to have an ultrasound in our clinic, 80% chance that they'll choose life for that baby if they get to hear the heartbeat. So that was just a great thing to see. And we had a biblical counselor, pastor here in the area that was on our original board, and he started doing family counseling. Miss Yvonne Reed, who was one of our original founders, was a licensed counselor as well, and she was doing counseling services. So we saw that the need arising for more biblical counseling in the area as well. So we have kept that portion of the ministry as it has grown. And our vision overall, vision and mission statement, is to share the hope of Jesus Christ with every interaction that we have, whether it's a mother coming in a crisis pregnancy, a father that comes in that's sitting in the waiting room waiting.
They're wide-eyed and are like, what did I just get myself into?
We try to weave that gospel conversation into every aspect of our interactions with them. Or if it's a young couple or an older couple that's in a crisis marriage situation and dealing with infidelity or pornography addictions, we see a little bit of everything coming in. We hope that we can point them back to Scripture and point them back to Christ. So that's really where we are now. We have grown from those humble beginnings back in 1983 to now we've been there 42 years. We have 19 paid staff members, and we have about 40 volunteers that kind of rotate through on a monthly basis that'll come and give us a couple of hours a week just to sit and talk and pray with some of our clients. We have donors or volunteers that come in that just work in our baby boutique and organize baby clothes and diapers for us. So there's things. We have a volunteer landscape company that comes in and volunteers their services to keep all of our grounds looking great. So there's lots of opportunities for volunteers there as well.
Well, when I first came to Dothan, I had just come from a church that was a thriving church in Orlando, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
where I was not the priest. I was archaeologist who
Uh-huh.
was a deacon in the Anglican tradition. But I enjoyed that. But all of a sudden it seemed like God just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
lightning strikes and says, "Okay, why don't you do this full time?" Oh, well, so I wanted to follow the example of the church that I had left, where I
Uh,
was, volunteering myself as one of the deacons they could use for
mm-hmm.
their ministry, but I wanted to follow their example as much as I could coming here. And one of the examples they had always set was they had a great relationship with their local crisis pregnancy center, because the belief really was, I don't know how you can be so vocally. I mean, it doesn't make sense to be very vocally anti-abortion
Mm-hmm.
and not be just enthusiastically and passionately pro-grace,
Progress and pro-family. Mm-hmm.
pro-family, pro-grace. How to support young women and young men
Mm-hmm.
in crisis in a way, because um, my my dad was born, I think, in the early 40s. I'm trying to think. He's me plus 30, so that would have been like, uh, 41.
Uh-huh.
Um, uh, and so, or yeah, no, actually closer to 39. Point is that as I share the family story, hear about the family story, I realize, how my grandparents discovered that, she's pregnant with my dad. And in those days, a woman could be, if she wasn't married, she'd be considered in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I exist probably because abortion was not legal at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about young women that now find themselves in a situation where crisis is the crisis moment has suspended their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you penetrate that? How do you get into that space where you're like, here's a way to think about that and just think beyond the panic.
It is. It is a hard place. The first thing we've got to come across is love. We love
Mm-hmm.
them and accept them no matter what decision they end up making. Of course, they're going to have to make the decision,
Mm-hmm.
but we always are pointing them back to truth and scripture as much as they'll allow us to.
Right.
And just to have somebody, a lot of times we might be the first positive voice that this woman has heard in her life.
Right.
So a lot of times it just takes that grace and love and being able to show that, in order for the woman to feel like she can let her guard down and really allow us to be able to help her see what options she has out there. What options can we help her with? We have two social workers actually on staff with us that can help with referrals for other services, for housing and transportation, and helping a woman just get on their feet.
Right.
And a lot of times it's just that they just don't see a way at that point. But if we can slow the conversation down, let them know, hey, you've got 9 months to figure this out.
Right.
And we're going to walk with you all the way through this. If we can get that woman to come back after that initial visit and have an ultrasound.
Right.
Again, like I said, if we can get them to have an ultrasound, most of the time they choose life. It just gives them that connection with life and to realize this isn't just a blob of
Right.
cells. We hear that heartbeat. So if we can get a woman past that and get them enrolled in our parenting pregnancy program, we're going to weave gospel conversations throughout those next 9 months.
Okay.
And our goal at the end of that 9 months, we then have rolled into starting an after baby program. It was kind of at the turn of COVID, 2020, 2021,
Right.
we were able to acquire an old florist shop that was located next door. So we were able to expand our services over into that building, and we received a grant to be able to start an after baby program. Postpartum depression is big as well in our area, and just overall with mental health.
Right.
As it is. So we've got a counselor that specializes in postpartum depression now that meets, and she does a screening with all of our new mamas when they come back through after the baby's born. And so we can line up some after baby counseling or postpartum counseling. But our goal is we hope to be able to disciple that young woman and the father. We have a fatherhood program as well until the child gets 2 years old.
Right.
And our vision is that every family that comes through, we're able to get them connected into a local church for further discipleship after the baby's 2.
Mentoring is such a big deal.
Yes.
I mean, and this is something that I lament oftentimes, because I do encounter more young people that are looking for mentors than I do older people that are looking for people to mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just we adopted culturally. We adopted kind of like this retirement mentality, which is a cultural, not a biblical concept.
Mm-hmm.
And tribes across the world have this robust system whereby the elders are pouring into the younger people their wisdom, their experience, and so forth. And one of the things I lament that we take a lot of our older people and we kind of shunt them off to the villages in Florida and don't think about how can we, you're an army of wisdom that could be helping these young people, especially in moments when they don't know what to do.
That's exactly right. And the average age of a lot of our mentors is older, is retirees, a lot of older men that work in our fatherhood program. Some of them may not have had a strong father figure growing up, and they see the importance of that now since they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And they're wanting to pour back into a younger generation. So it is beautiful. We started our fatherhood program maybe about 7-8 years ago now, where we were seeing more men coming and sitting in our waiting room or either sitting in their vehicles outside. And we would start just trying to engage conversations with them. And we had a few men that started volunteering that would take them in the back and just have a conversation, see kind of where they were in life, what they were thinking about this baby. And from that, we just evolved into a full fatherhood program now too, to where the dads can come for 9 visits during the pregnancy, and then we're working right now on building out a fatherhood program for after baby, and it's beautiful to watch. In the past 2 months, we have had 6 salvations in our fatherhood program.
Wonderful.
And when you think about that, when a father decides to choose salvation.
All right.
What an influence that father has over that family.
It really does.
I mean, when you look at statistics, if a father chooses salvation and decides that for his family, I mean, you usually see the rest of the family following suit and joining him in church.
That was a big challenge for us, especially late in the 80s and 90s, because many North American churches had perceived that to be primarily a feminine enterprise. I was heavily involved in the Promise Keepers movement back in the 90s, and that was a response. That was an evangelical response to a perceived lack of any interest by men of going to church. And so they were trying to kind of bring back that balanced message of, the gospel is one in which both men and women become fully what they're meant to be.
Right.
And so, but somehow that had been kind of lost a little ways.
It has, and we're still seeing that in the generations now coming through. As mentioned earlier, I work with young adults at our church, and I mean, it's predominantly female that we're seeing. And it's like there's like a delay or a longer adolescent period for young men these days. It just seems like they're not wanting to take responsibility, and I'm just speaking in generality terms. It's not all, but you're seeing less and less if you look at most congregations on a Sunday morning.
Well, for that reason, many cases congregations have to focus on. Typically any doctor looks at a person and says, okay, you're unhealthy. We're going to focus on the thing. Yes, we want you all fully healthy, but we're going to focus on the thing that seems to be lacking the most in you.
Right.
You have a vitamin deficiency or this, whatever. And for many churches sometimes are finding that they are thriving if they really focus on maintaining a robust culture for male Christians' influence. And so I was trained at a church in Houston that had the last Friday of every month, they would have what they call Pipe Club, where just the men of the church hang out on the patio. It was an unprogrammatized time of just being men amongst yourselves. And it's really interesting because in that period, in that space, my oldest son, part of his rite of passage was, Dad, I've turned 18. Now can I go enjoy a cigar with the men of the church on the patio? Like, absolutely.
But it's just embracing masculinity as well,
right,
in that rite of passage.
Right. And part of that masculine message is, okay, you've made a child. The responsibility now falls on you.
Right.
And yes, it's a big weight on your shoulders, but you don't mind weight on your shoulders if you go to the gym.
That's right.
You don't
and
mind.
How can you lead and protect?
Right,
That's
exactly.
the 2 main things, we need to see in the masculine is how are you going to lead your family?
Right.
Leading them to the Lord, but leading them just in growth as well and protecting.
Well, and trying to help share with young men the manliness of embracing the difficult thing. Okay, so you're a man. You're have a moment in crisis. This is what a man does, and he embraces the thing that's difficult.
Right.
While everyone else is running away, you're actually facing it, running into it. I spent many years with the fire service as a chaplain. And we all talk about this firefighters having a screw loose, where when everybody's running away, you're running in. But there's that conveys something of the masculine soul in a sense. And so if we help our young men that way, that's really, I think, helps them in a sense, particularly because they're modeling Christ. I mean, we have that sense. I don't always use the King James Version in our service because for continuity's sake, but I like different other ways translations will say things sometimes poetically. But the King James Version still, I think, has the best translation when it describes Jesus' fortitude and focus in terms of headed toward the cross, because it uses the phrase, and he resolutely set his face toward Jerusalem. That's kind of a transliteration of the original text. Others will say, well, he headed toward Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Like, no, I really like the King James.
Means you were focused.
Exactly
you were
right.
tuned in.
He resolutely set his face toward where he's going to die. It's like this manliness of setting your face on this thing that everyone else is going to flee and run away from.
Yeah.
And we and fatherhood is something that we can, I think, instill in our young men as something that's like, no, everyone else will run away, but you won't. You will be different.
Yes.
So please share with me a little bit about your story. You
said
you've been
my story? Yes,
you've been in Dothan forever.
I have. I grew up in this area, originally from Geneva County, so just about 30 minutes from Dothan, and grew up in a rural agricultural area. My husband actually is a preacher's son as well, and his dad was the pastor had actually moved to our area, was the pastor at my home church, and growing up. And anyway, we were high school sweethearts, got married, went to college and got married, got 2 daughters. We have a local business here in Dothan, and my background was accounting and finance. And both of us had successful careers, was working in our family business, and had our second child in 2007. And I had severe postpartum depression with it. I had never had issues with any mental health, anxiety, depression before in the past. And my OB referred me over to Wiregrass Hope for some counseling services and went in. And once I found out what all they did, I just fell in love with the place. My husband had always been involved in youth and young adult ministry in some capacity. But just seeing all these women coming in, I was like, God, just show me if this is an area you want me to work. And I started volunteering as a mentor, just working with some of the young women coming in with crisis pregnancies. And did that for a couple of years after I had finished my counseling services myself. And as my children got bigger, and I've got an older daughter as well, they're 3 years apart. But I had to step away a little bit just because our business was growing. And I talked with the executive director then at the time. She had been mentoring me quite a bit, just being a young mom and a young business owner. And she asked me to roll on the board. And so this was 2011, 2012, I rolled on the board of directors for Wiregrass Hope and continued to volunteer as much as I could here and there, but was involved in some capacity since then. And a couple of years ago, after COVID, I'd just been doing some soul searching. God had been working on me about more. My children were grown. We were getting to the point empty nesters, and the executive director position came open at Wiregrass Hope, and I put my name in for it. And it has been a great transition. I just feel like the Lord's using my gifts. And we even had a staff retreat this past week, and I was telling them that I think this past year, I've only been in the role for a little over a year now, but I feel like that's probably the most fulfilling year of my career I've ever had. I don't view it as a job. It's exciting every day to get to work.
You love what you do. You don't work a day in your life.
You don't. That's right. That's right. So kind of making the same, like you were talking about, being an archaeologist, having a major career change in the last couple of years.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, it's no different for ministry. I mean, I remember I've volunteered myself as a deacon in the church, preaching and doing different things for so many years that finally when the idea came up, to do this full time, we throw around terms sometimes in churches that we don't want to define. But one of the terms we throw around a lot is the word calling.
Yes.
What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah.
I mean, as though somehow the compulsion to go into full-time ministry is somehow completely leaves your personality and desires and sense of adventure it's all in mixed together.
It's the perception a lot of people have though when you choose ministry.
As though the Holy Spirit has you do something that He hasn't been preparing your personality to do forever.
Forever, yeah.
I mean, you talk to any missionary, they have a profound sense of risk tolerance. But nevertheless, I had volunteered myself as a minister for so long that it was a little bit of a change. Like, okay, full time. They'll pay me to do that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're not going to get rich in ministry.
No, no,
So
no.
you can't
Right.
be doing it
But
for
the
that.
idea is that
So,
I
yeah,
get to do this all the
all the
time. I
time.
mean, my goodness,
That's your
just,
passion.
it really is.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, where did you do your counseling training?
Well, now we have a mentor. We do training there
Okay.
on staff. Yeah, we have a counseling or a mentoring training program there.
Okay.
I've got my bachelor's in business and finance,
Okay.
but I'm debating on. That's been an area I've been struggling with and walking through. Is it time for me to go back in my master's? So
I had wondered about that. I just
mhm.
remember in seminary that there was in those days, it may be totally different now, but in those days there was people tried to differentiate or tried to be very specific about biblical counseling and Christian counseling,
Mhm.
and that talking to those two strategies was always a very interesting
It is.
topic.
And now we have 2 licensed professional counselors on our staff
Uh-huh.
that have the state licensing credentials, done all of the board certifications and things that they need to have. And with that, you can file for insurance, you can get the full charge for services. Biblical counseling, on the other end, recognizes less of the counseling side, like in theory.
Right,
And
right.
I'm probably not going to be using the right terms with this, but the Christian counseling side of things, though, can go more into using different strategies for counseling.
Right.
So,
Well, and it was my understanding Christian counseling utilizes all of the
biblical.
well, and it utilizes all the tools that are that are made abundant in normal psychology, counseling fields that would be considered secular.
That's right.
But they apply all of those through a Christian lens. Well,
from a biblical worldview.
From a biblical worldview through a Christian lens, but because of that integrated approach, that was seen as, by some that I was trained under, that was seen as a compromise, where in their view, using Bible alone should be sufficient. And the rhetoric got very interesting after a while, because I was trained at a Bible college that took a biblical counseling approach, and went to seminary at where they took a Christian counseling approach. And the Bible college said, "Oh, please don't go to that seminary. They don't believe in God's word anymore." Like, okay, that's a very strong way to put it.
Wow.
But they thought that they were, they thought that they were safeguarding the sufficiency of Scripture by eschewing all of the tools that might be available to them in kind of the quote unquote secular market.
Mental health, just as you do, any medical health issues.
Right.
I mean, we will use any other physician's approach to taking care of our physical bodies.
Right.
What's the difference in using that same approach? If there's grounded different exercises, different treatment options that you can use for mental health.
Right.
That exist alongside biblical counseling.
Right. And then that was always fascinating to me. I wanted to dive into that, because that's whether it was a integrated, an adversarial, or a completely separate approach. And those seem to be the ways in which people could go. And the where we use the Bible and nothing else approach saw these people as compromising, as and not fully confessing the sufficiency of Scripture. The Christian counseling people looked at the others as untrained simpletons who weren't willing to kind of like work through all the different issues, and like both people weren't quite appreciating the contribution of either. Right. But that's why I wondered if there was one of those that your counselors had leaned more toward, or if there was
ours probably have leaned more toward. We do have 2 volunteer counselors that's not paid, but both of them come from a biblical counseling training background. But we do coexist well altogether. Now, what we do see a lot of times, if we get into an issue, because we do see quite a few men and women both that have been through some pretty aggressive trauma and dealing with some post-traumatic stress. When we start getting into some issues like that, if they're seeing one of our biblical volunteer counselors, a lot of times they take more of a pastoral counseling, pastoral care type counseling approach. if it gets into an area that they don't feel comfortable with digging into more of like a PTSD
Right.
or a previous major like sexual trauma,
Mm-hmm.
then they transfer or suggest that they get referred over to one of our licensed counselors.
Yeah, I myself always kind of lean toward an integrated approach
Mm-hmm.
because I mean I know my default is to go start from the perspective of start from God's word, start from the place where there's going to be the greatest health for the soul. But then over time, as a fire chaplain, I learned about critical incident stress management.
Mm-hmm.
I learned about trauma and the ways in which this festers and that just to me was part of the wisdom of learning God's creation.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are God's creation. And so the wisdom of learning creation is knowing the ways in which we compartmentalize and put things under, and stuff things down and have to need a pressure relief valve of conversation. Mm-hmm. That, these are all things that I thought it wasn't contrary to the scriptures to learn all those tools.
Right. Yeah.
So now what is the current state? I know ever since it was the Dobbs decision what was the decision that reversed Roe versus Wade?
Yes, and back in 2022. It was 2022
right.
when we had the reversal. So it's been 3 years ago this past June.
Which sent more control back to the states.
Sent more control back to the states. The state of Alabama is fully banned. No abortions are allowed in the state of Alabama. In Florida, it's a heartbeat law. So once you get to the point you can hear the heartbeat, which is usually 5 to 6 weeks, no abortion is allowed. Georgia's the same way. Probably the closest state that goes further is North Carolina and Missouri. Both have a little bit more lenience, but they're both still within the first trimester. So you can't be past about 13, 14 weeks. But here in the state of Alabama, though, it's kind of a misnomer. We are seeing a rise in the abortion pill.
That's what I wondered. I wanted to ask you about the assertion that abortion has actually risen in number.
It has risen in
when
number.
Accounting for the shift from medical to, say, prophylactic or oral abortion.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're probably battling that more now than on anything. We're still seeing high numbers coming through. With the abortion pill, you can take it up to 10 weeks. And with the abortion pill, though, even though it's banned in the state of Alabama, they can go online to a teledoc. You can Google it. I have actually gone on myself and posed as a 16, 17-year-old girl, answered all the questions on one of the teledoc websites. It's not actually teledoc, but it's like one of those like websites that you can go. But you can Google it, find any of those, go on. I could have ordered and had it shipped to Dothan, Alabama, with just answering a few questions. And me answering it as a 16, 17-year-old girl, a minor, as long as I was willing to pay crazy amounts. But from there, they can pretty much tell you exactly how to take it. It's usually over 2 pills over 24 hours. The first one pretty much stops the heartbeat and the growth of the child, kills the embryo. And then the second one causes you to go into labor and to expel it. From there, they pretty much... the instructions on it is if you do have severe bleeding that continues on, if you go to the emergency room, you're not to disclose that you've taken this, that you've just had a natural miscarriage. And we have seen some problems with that even at our facility where women would come in that are taking this pill after 10 weeks. They could be 14, 15 weeks. They've been ended up in emergency rooms in our area as well for the same reason because there's just no regulation on it. And it is.
So the law hasn't caught up with.
The law has not caught up.
They've got well-meaning ethics.
Interstate commerce. I mean, they can purchase it online.
I see. Okay.
Shipped anywhere.
So there's well-meaning legislation with regard to the violent medical abortion, but the law hasn't caught up with the ethics of that as relates to mailing these narcotics to people directly.
That's right.
Life-ending narcotics. I understand. It seems like that would be a subject for possible national legitation because of interstate commerce.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it would be.
Yeah. Interesting. You have to count your victories where you can, but then you have this other. It's whack-a-mole. You push this down and Planned Parenthood is losing a lot of funding, in my understanding, which is wonderful. I remember when I lived in Houston.
But then in some states, it's still. Especially out west. I mean, there's still some states that are Michigan here recently up to through birth up to 32, 34 weeks. I mean, you can still get one. It's
really kind of I don't want to say discouraging because, again, you count their victories where you can, but in a post-Christian world where we seem to be experiencing a little bit, it's really interesting to see how we resurrect the old ancient Canaanite gods, specifically Moloch.
That's right.
You know,
Sacrifice.
I mean, because we just took just well over 60 million children have died this way. It's my understanding.
That's right.
But we have to always be vigilant about what we can do because you can't be overwhelmed by the numbers and just give up. I grew up in a church that liked to protest things. They would find an abortion. They would find an abortion, doctor or clinic in town, or it may be something else. It could be, back in those days, pornography was shown in theaters, whatever. Like, we'll picket that. So picket this, whatever, picket things, and we like to protest and picket things. It wasn't obvious to me exactly how many people were ever converted that way. In fact, on the university campus, I see a lot of people sometimes with sandwich signs, and they'll be out there and with a bullhorn, and they'll be, declaring exactly how many people are going to hell, and they'll have a picture of some
change very many minds
abortion. And as an anthropologist, I was always fascinated by that because I wanted to know, okay, considering that statistically somewhere around 0 people are converted this way, the goal of it must not be conversion. So I started trying to study exactly what was the goal. What was the goal? And it turns out I think that the goal necessarily was status acquisition in a bounded social marketplace. Because you've got a small group of people that have some means of developing status from among them. Spontaneous religious status is something that is really rampant. If you've ever been
power driven.
Well, if you've ever been in a prayer circle, you'll see how people will start, upping the ante as it goes around the circle. Persons, who will be reviewing their theology each time they pray go by, and then if you really want to mess up that entire flow, just say ditto of what that person said. But this idea of social acquisition wound up being something that's not conversion, was not persuasion, and conversion was not the goal. It was I'm really see how countercultural I am, see how much persecution I can endure because someone is going to object in my face, whatever. And so that kind of social cultural warrior idea was really seemed to have been the goal. It wasn't persuasion, it wasn't grace, it wasn't trying to convert someone over to your side. And so I always got curious as to what is the most effective way in which we approach people in crisis. It's not, I don't think it's picketing outside Planned Parenthood, especially now that the drugs can be shipped directly to their home.
That's right.
So what can we do? What's some of our best strategies? I'm sure you have several.
Well, that is really hard from the standpoint of the abortion pill. Education is probably one of the top.
Okay.
Us just being able to try to educate the community on what the abortion pill actually does. Making sure we're educating young adults on the choices and stuff they're making with their bodies.
Okay.
If we can ever get a woman to come through our doors, we've got a proven track record. We can usually get women to see that child as life.
Okay.
Once we can get them in our doors. For this year so far, I pulled the numbers looking at them before I come over to talk with you today, and we've had 650 pregnancy tests here in Dothan, Alabama, women coming to our center. Now, a lot of those are women they're excited about their pregnancy. They are looking, it could be someone that's lower income that doesn't have health insurance. So this is their way of getting their proof of pregnancy. And we do Medicaid application assistance as well. So we want to see all of them coming in because it still gives us the opportunity to have those mentoring conversations.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be just a crisis pregnancy. We welcome all pregnancies into our center. But out of the ones that came this past year, we've had 70 that chose life for their baby. Altogether, from what we've tracked, we had right at 90 that have come to our center that were abortion-minded, that came to us believing we were an abortion clinic or believing that we could provide the abortion pill for them that's just uneducated. But if we could get them in the door out of those 90, we've had 70 that chose life. And we've been able to track and keep track with them and keep in contact with them during the pregnancy so far this year.
So really, there's got to be ways of just basically bringing them to you.
Yeah. Now, and another big tool we had a new website built that is just focused on the client a couple of years, or
Okay.
back this past year. We hired a marketing firm to come in and help us to where anytime someone Googles, we've got all of the search words for if you Google for abortion pill Dothan, Alabama, or abortion providers in Dothan, Alabama, we pop up on the first page with Google. So that has been a great avenue to where we have women call us thinking that we might be an abortion clinic. And I know it sounds kind of tricky and like we're trying to pull something over on them, but if we can get them to call, then we can say, well, hey, we've got options.
Right.
We need you to come in and talk with us to where we can kind of go through what all the options are you could have. And then if we can just get them in front of us, that's really where the Lord, we just see it happen.
I'm very averse to placing too much trust in governmental things. Just
Yes.
they've got their role, and the church has its role, and so forth. But nevertheless, so much of the problem seems to be oftentimes be in education. The way our education system has so much gotten invasive into the things that children go through beyond reading, writing, arithmetic, that it seems as though one of the things that can happen at the statewide level is possible. Is there any way in which legislation can be pursued whereby awareness of centers like yours throughout the state is part of an education,
Well, and I think we're getting
curriculum.
there.
Okay.
Especially, and I think it's just slowly catching up.
Okay.
I've had conversations with our local representatives. Paul Lee and Donnie Chastain both have been great advocates and supporters for the Crisis Pregnancy Center movement. In fact, they have allocated some funds from this past year's session for pregnancy centers that we are hoping to be able to help offset some of our additional costs.
Okay.
Because that's really the goal, as I've talked with both of these guys, is we can say we're pro-life all we want to, but unless we have a plan for these families that decide to choose life, what are we doing? And so by the time we're hoping to be able to get some of those resources by the end of this year to where it can help us expand our after baby program and care a little bit more.
Well, in addition to that, I was also wondering, is there any way to get these type of options or this information in front of young people
in the school system?
In schools.
We used to have a program called CARE, which was character and abstinence, and character and relationship education training. That allowed us to go into the schools pre-COVID. Now, after COVID, there was more of a lockdown. So we lost our funding that we were receiving to be able to go into the school system with that, and we've not been able to get it back. But in the meantime, there has been some changes with the Alabama Department of Public Health from a Medicaid cut standpoint, where they're not doing pregnancy tests anymore for uninsured women going into the health departments in the area.
I see.
We've worked hard to build great relationships with our local health departments, and we have supplied them with brochures and rack cards and information, and they are referring tons of women over to us, which has been a blessing. When we found out this all happened in February of this past year, we figured out real quick we were going to have to pivot and figure out how we could handle more clients coming in, but it has been beautiful. Our numbers are up 60% so far this year over last year. And that's just more women and young men that we're able to have an influence on for their families and hopefully pointing them to the Lord.
That's a beautiful intervention. I mean, just basically standing in front of the altar of Moloch going, nope, there's a different way to go.
That's right. That's right. So that education has been real well received too, with the local health departments being willing to work with us. Wonderful.
That's fantastic. And Alabama, you're saying this is just a complete no abortion state.
It is.
But of course, in terms of we also border Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, and those.
Mississippi is a banned state as well. Florida is up to heartbeat, which is around 6 weeks. The closest abortion clinic to us, there's one in Tallahassee and one in Pensacola. I believe the one in Pensacola is still there.
I see.
It's 2 Planned Parenthood facilities that were located in each of those. I think the one in Pensacola might have shut down here recently, but those are the closest. But one in Columbus, Georgia.
But mail-in abortions is still going something that people will have to address.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to me.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come. If any of your church, your church family here would be interested in learning more, you've got my contact information.
Absolutely.
I would
No,
love for anyone to come by, or we'd host anyone here to come for a tour one night.
Well, I don't know that you saw. I don't know if you saw the bulletin insert that we
Yes.
made when you put it in there, and immediately after I had gone to visit Amy, so I put that in there so it remains part of our prayer regimen here, and also on our bulletin board, so people know that those volunteer opportunities, they know that they can come.
Yes.
But we also want to. You understand you have regular fundraisers throughout the year.
We have a Walk for Life every spring, which got rained out this past year. But we had gotten good sponsorships beforehand, so we actually made more on it, didn't have it, than we did the previous year.
Do you have a fundraiser in fall also?
We do. We have a banquet coming up, and I will get you some information on it to share with your congregation.
Well, thank you.
It's usually the week before Thanksgiving. On that Tuesday at the Dothan Civic Center, we have usually 700 to 800 people there.
Really?
We give an overview. We have some of our clients sharing their stories of just the change, that they've seen with their families using our services. So it's always a great event. So I'll be sure and let you know.
Well, I'm very passionate about this topic, not just because I'm pro-life and not, and very lament that our nation has really ever tolerated the sin of abortion, but also I'm a grandfather, and I'm a grandfather of 3 beautiful children, one of which was stillborn.
Oh, wow.
And my son and my daughter-in-law, their first child, little Micah, they found out that I think it was one of her first examinations when she was pregnant, found out that Micah had what's referred to at the time as Edwards syndrome, which is like I don't remember all the exact details, but I guess a chromosome goes awry and they just develop in an abnormal fashion. And so because of ways in which bones and joints develop, the child like that is incredible pain for a lot of their existence, and very seldomly make it to term. And if they do, are born, they only live within maybe hours, a very short time after born. Well, once they found out about that, of course, everyone at the hospital was like abort, and they made the decision that no, I mean this is the child's alive. This is not for us to say.
Right.
And so by faith, we are going to do what God has called us to do, and that is to be a parent to this child, however long we can, even if up to the point where he may be born. Well, so the doctor's like, fine, we'll send you home with a audio heartbeat detector. Every morning they wake up to listen for heartbeat, knowing that the day that they don't hear one, they go to the hospital. 6 months they did this.
And heard that heartbeat.
Every morning they get up and hear the heartbeat. And then on the day, and then it was pretty close to when my daughter-in-law was actually going into labor. It was a little bit early, but she was actually going into labor. That's when, during that process is when he passed. And so he passed just a short while, just a few hours before she gave birth and was finally able to hold him.
Oh, wow.
But I'm pretty proud of my son.
But what impact, though,
I mean,
that child had?
I mean, my son and my daughter-in-law, they were parents to this child, knowing statistically they will never hold him alive. And they went, no, we're parents. Yeah. And so we will be with the child.
And that was their first.
Yeah.
That was the first.
A year later, they were blessed with twins who were running around like crazy and eating them out of house and home. And so those guys are just absolutely fantastic. But it was, and I don't want to over assert things, but it just can't help but sometimes think that it seems as though they are faithful with this one child. And then again, not to overstate it, but it seems as though as a reward for their faithfulness to one child, they get 2 that are just never going to be contained now. So they get twins immediately afterwards. And boy, that was just a redemption story that I can't believe we lived out, because you couldn't have scripted it better. But we mourned, we were sad, but
They were obedient, though.
They understood.
Mm-hmm.
They understood that this is a child is alive, and God will take them when He wants.
Mm-hmm. We've had some similar situations with that, with some of our clients that come through. One thing I failed to mention too, we do offer services for miscarriage and infant loss. We have counseling services and support groups for women that have had miscarriage, and we also have a post-abortive ministry. We've had women in our area that have had abortion.
Big deal.
And
That's a big
and are still
deal.
grieving. They can't forgive themselves.
Oh, I've actually
We've got a Bible study and a support group that works through that.
In different times of ministry, I've known women who had gone through that and just were in a panic at the time, and then wonder if God will ever forgive them.
Right.
And will they ever feel clean? Will they ever feel redeemable after that? And to try to say, listen, if God can forgive me executing His Son on a cross, I think we can work with you too.
That's right.
So, but
they have to grieve. They have to understand it's okay to grieve. I mean, it was your decision that you made, but you still need to grieve.
Right.
And turn it over to the Lord.
Forgiveness is a process. It's not an event, especially when you have to receive it. Yes. Giving it is one thing. Receiving it is a different thing altogether. And so, for some, forgiveness will be difficult to imagine for themselves after that. And I'm glad that you said that, because sometimes in our zeal to be anti-abortion, we can be, we can throw the woman out with the bathwater.
That's right.
And so we don't want to.
But we got to love them both.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's why in the email I said I was kind of curious about how a culture of grace can address these things. If we can, through this deployment of God's grace to people, basically, that's how we win. That's how we persuade. That's how we share and bring them into joy. It's not the same.
It's a lot harder because it's going to take more time.
We're called to the hard thing.
That's right.
We're called to the hard thing. That's the message to young men. Suck it up. We're called to the hard thing. Yeah. So, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I sure enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed this too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.